I have around like 8 years of experience in MicroStrategy. I have worked across almost all the components: MicroStrategy architect, developer, administrator. Have even assisted on the installation and configuration. From the training perspective, I have been training candidates more than like 2 years now. And in the today's demo, I will discuss about the MicroStrategy. What are the topics that we're gonna cover it up, and we will see how exactly we can pace our training. So let's first try to understand what is MicroStrategy. A MicroStrategy is a reporting tool. Okay, so like whenever you work in any data warehousing project, you have a backend and the front end, where like you get a data from the user, you get it processed through the ETL, get it loaded into the warehouse, and on top of that you have some of the reporting tool which fetches the data from the warehouse and display the data in the format of a report or a dashboard that you have set it up. Okay, that's a basic flow in any data warehousing project you work. MicroStrategy is one of the reporting tool which helps you to fetch the data from the warehouse and finally display in the format of dashboards and reports that you have created. This is the basic architecture of MicroStrategy. If you look at the presentation over here, just a minute. Okay, so if you look at this, if you look at the presentation over here, this is the MicroStrategy architecture. I understand before we go ahead and see more about the MicroStrategy, it's good that we understand how exactly the MicroStrategy works. As of now, you can just forget about this components on the right side, that is MicroStrategy and metadata. That is something that we're going to discuss in few. If you look on the left hand side, we have three components. We have source system, ETL, and the warehouse. Common, right? So like any warehouse project you work, you have the source system, you have ETL base as well as the data warehouse. Source system is something which is to which you get the actual data feed. Source system forms your actual data feed. Whatever the data feed you receive from the client, that has to be processed further. That forwarded to the team for the further processing. So that's it. Say source system is just a flat file, unprocessed data, and that needs to get loaded into your warehouse and finally display in the reporting. So source system, as we say, forms the actual data. Once you receive the data in the source system, you need to get it processed and save it in the warehouse, loaded in the warehouse basically. So you need some tool which extracts the data from the source system and finally load into the warehouse. We have a tool called as ETL. The name itself suggests extract, transform, and load. ETL, it's a backend tool. There are various tools available in the market. There we have data stage, we have Informatica, and so on. As I said, the name itself suggests the role of the ETL tool is to extract, transform, and load. Extract, it's going to extract the required data from the source system. A source system will have n number of columns. That's I will not say exactly the columns, but yeah, like n number of columns which shows you the data. You do not require all the information to be imported in the warehouse, right? You will only need the information. You will need only those columns on which you want to create your reports, basically. So it's going to extract the required columns from the source system. Second, it's going to apply the required transformation. As I say, the source system is a flat file. It does not, it's not no aggregations are applied, nothing. So you have to transform the data, whatever the constraints you want to apply, whatever the aggregation, pre-aggregations basically, whatever it has to load into the warehouse. So the ETL, as I say, it's a backend tool. Extract the required data from the source system, apply all the transformations, aggregations, everything, and finally load into the warehouse. Third, data warehouse. A data warehouse is a repository of your data. Entire data is stored in much more structured way. So you have all the tables, columns in place, all the data resides under it, all the required constraints are applied, everything has been systematic. It's all, the entire data is stored in a much more structured way. So these three components you will come across any of the warehouse project. You will have source system, you will have ETL, and finally you will have a warehouse. Once the data comes into the warehouse, you need a reporting tool which will fetch the data from warehouse. Over here, this is how the MicroStrategy works. This is something which shows how MicroStrategy exactly works. Whenever you work on a MicroStrategy, you will you understand that you will have a component through which you can execute your reports, and there is also one component called as metadata. So let's try to understand what is the role of metadata as well. Whenever you perform any request from MicroStrategy, either I run a report, I run a prompt, any kind of a request operation which has been performed via MicroStrategy, it does not hit the warehouse directly. Instead, it will always first go to the metadata. What is metadata? A metadata is a repository which stores all the object definition. Whatever the objects you have created in MicroStrategy, you have report, you have prompt, you have filter, attributes, tables, whatever objects you create in MicroStrategy, every information is been stored in metadata. Metadata does not contain any data. Data lies within the warehouse, but metadata is specific to MicroStrategy, which stores all the object definition. So if you create any new, you modify the existing, or you delete something, everything would be recorded in the metadata. So now whenever we try to run any report from MicroStrategy, first it comes to the metadata. Once it comes to the metadata, it's going to read all the object definition. So now let's say I'm trying to run a report yearly sales. I need to get a sales information by year. Okay, this is just the sample report that I'm trying to execute. So once I try to execute that report, it will come to the metadata. It will read the corresponding object definition. As I say, we are trying to see the yearly sales. So metadata will say, okay, how exactly the year object is mapped to, which table, which column. How my sales object is mapped to which table and which column, what kind of aggregation has been performed. Everything would be read by metadata. Once the object definitions have been fetched out, it's going to formulate the required SQL. So once the objects have been fetched out, once the object definitions have been fetched out, it's going to formulate the required SQL. It will have the select clause, sum clause, group by clause, whatever that depends upon your report definition. So once it's been done, MicroStrategy metadata, it's going to formulate the SQL. So till here, my SQL would be ready. Till metadata, my SQL is going to get ready. Once the SQL is ready, it's going to open a connection to the warehouse, fire that particular SQL, the SQL that has been that SQL that has been created, that has been formulated. It will be executed in the warehouse. Data would be fetched, and once the data would be fetched, it will come back to MicroStrategy and display the data in the format of reports or a dashboard, whatever you have set it up. So whenever you perform a request from MicroStrategy, first it will come to metadata. In metadata, it's going to read all the object definition, like whatever the objects you have used in the report. Based on that, it's going to read all its definition, formulate the SQL. Once the SQL is ready, open a connection to the warehouse, fire that particular SQL, fetch the required data, come back to MicroStrategy and display as per the format that we have set in the reports or the dashboards. Okay, so this is how exactly the MicroStrategy works, and this is the MicroStrategy PI architecture. I'm just going to take a pause over here, and please let me know if you guys have any questions so far.
When you say metadata, are you talking about schema objects that actually has that information? Or is something else?
Okay. Metadata stores all the object definition. It's not only restricted to schema objects. Okay. A metadata schema objects is different. Okay, schema objects that we're going to create in MicroStrategy. A metadata is a repository. So when you install your MicroStrategy, at that point of time, I'm going to show you how to configure the metadata as well. Metadata is a central repository which stores all the object definitions. So if you create attributes, if you create any kind of a schema object, if you create any kind of an application object, public objects, every type of an object definition would be recorded in metadata. A metadata is not the schema object. Schema objects are something different. A metadata object is just a repository which stores all the object definition.
Okay.
Does it answer your query, Praveen?
Yeah.
Perfect.
So you define all the joins and all those things in metadata. Right? For example, there are 3 tables from which you have to bring objects. So which table is joined to which table, on what condition, all those things are defined in metadata.
Joining conditions over here are not directly defined. It's the way you have created your schema objects, something called as attributes. Okay, to answer your question over here, it's like we are definitely going to see everything. But yeah, to answer the question at this point of time, we have something called as attributes and schema objects. The way you create your schema object, based on that my SQL is going to formulate it. So if in case I have data I'm trying to pull from 3 tables, based on the relationship I have defined, based on the the relationship table I have defined, based on that my tables are going to get joined on specific set of columns. That we will see in detail, but metadata does not store any kind of a join condition as such. But yes, the relationship that you have defined, that will be definitely saved under metadata.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? No? Okay. Now, I will just walk you through about the training content so that it will give you an insight like what are topics that we're gonna cover throughout the training. In this particular training, we're gonna understand what is MicroStrategy. We're gonna see what a few of the MicroStrategy interfaces, like we have MicroStrategy desktop, we have MicroStrategy web. We're gonna even see how to configure the MicroStrategy server and few of the administration tasks. Thereafter, we're gonna see MicroStrategy architect, all the topics under the MicroStrategy architect, and all the topics under the MicroStrategy developer. We are even going to cover a few advanced MicroStrategy topics, and finally, we're going to see how to create the documents, dashboards, and visual insights. So if you look over here, I'll just walk you through very quickly about all the the main topics that we're gonna cover. We're gonna see like what is the MicroStrategy desktop. MicroStrategy desktop is one of the interface, okay, that through which your entire development happens. Okay, so if I show you at this point of time, this is how the MicroStrategy desktop or MicroStrategy developer looks like. Whatever on the left hand side you see, that's the first object through which you can actually enter into the MicroStrategy environment. These are all called as project source. Okay, a project source is something which is directly connected to your metadata. As of now, we are already aware what is metadata. So this is just at very high level. Don't worry about that. When we start actual training, we're gonna cover everything in detail, and this is just to make you familiarize with few of the terminologies. So this is the desktop interface. This is the developer interface through which your entire development happens. So as a MicroStrategy architect or a developer, we will always work on the MicroStrategy developer or MicroStrategy desktop, but as an end user, the user will always have an access to MicroStrategy web. Okay, a MicroStrategy web is a UI through which they log in and they run their required reports and dashboards. Okay, so this is one of the interface, that is the MicroStrategy developer, and whatever on the left hand side you see, that is MicroStrategy Analytics module or something, they are called as project source. So if in case you have to log in into the MicroStrategy, you have to authenticate yourself in the project source. So if I try to log in over here, it is asking for my required credentials. I'll just give my credentials, and once the credentials have been authenticated, I can see required projects which are there in MicroStrategy. So the initial entry point is the project source. As I see, the project source is connected directly one-to-one with the metadata. So if you look over here, this is the MicroStrategy Analytics module. As I say, it's a project source, and every project source is one-to-one mapped with the metadata. Once you log in into the project source, you will see a project. That is a MicroStrategy tutorial in our case, and project is the one which is mapped to your warehouse. So within the project source, I can have a multiple projects where each project can be pointed to a specific warehouse. And once I open up my project, I can see list of all folders under which I can create my required objects. So I can create my required objects, like I can say attributes, facts, all the schema objects, public objects, reports, dashboards, and so on. Okay. So once you try to log in into the MicroStrategy desktop, as we say that we have the initial entry point is through via project source. Project source is connected directly one-to-one with the metadata. Once you authenticate yourself under the project source, you will see a list of all the projects that you have access to. Each project is connected to the warehouse, and when you try to run any report from the warehouse, like any report from the project, it will go and fetch from the warehouse. So just to give you an overview, like what kind of objects that we have in MicroStrategy, this is just a sample representation of like what all kinds of MicroStrategy objects we have. At a broader level, we have a schema objects, we have a application objects. From the schema objects perspective, we have like attributes, facts, hierarchies, and so on. So whenever you start working on MicroStrategy, the first thing that you're going to create are the schema objects. A schema object plays a foundation role in your MicroStrategy environment. So you have to, whenever you work on a project from scratch or something, you need to have your required schema objects. Schema objects are the objects which are directly pointing to the tables and the columns in warehouse. So whatever the objects you create, like attributes, facts, or something, these are the ones which are directly pointing to a specific column of a table in the warehouse. Okay, and the other reason says that schema objects are very important objects in your MicroStrategy reporting environment. Once the schema objects have been created, schema objects have been used to create further the application objects. You can see as application objects, or you can see as public objects. Under the public objects, we have like we have templates, filters, metrics, consolidations, and so on. Application objects or the public objects are created using the schema objects. Application objects are not directly pointing to a table or columns, they are indirectly via your schema objects. So if in case I have to create a filter, I can create on an attribute. If in case I want to create a consolidation or custom group, I can create on an attribute or a filter respectively. So this first thing that you have to start working on are the schema objects. Once the schema objects have been created, once the schema objects are ready, you will go ahead and further create your application or the public objects. Schema objects are something which is directly mapped to the tables and the columns, whereas the application objects are created using the schema objects. And once this has been done, you can use your schema objects as well as application objects to finally create your reports, documents, or dashboard. So this is all about the MicroStrategy objects, and we are going to definitely going to cover up when we when we go through the training. So the MicroStrategy desktop, as we saw, it's an interface like where every developer or architect works. They will log in into the project source, and within the project they will create all the required objects. Second thing that we're going to cover up is the MicroStrategy server and the administration. During our training, we're going to see how to configure the MicroStrategy in a server environment or a direct environment. When we try to configure the MicroStrategy in a server environment, we need to see how exactly we need to install the server, how we need to configure the server, how we need to create the project source. Everything would be covered under the MicroStrategy Intelligence Server and Administration. So just directly working on MicroStrategy will never help, and that's the reason we have included the server configuration as well. We really need to understand how exactly the MicroStrategy is configured. Whenever you work in any live project, you can relate the things, and you can understand, like, okay, this is how exactly my MicroStrategy environment is configured. Thereafter, we will start with the MicroStrategy architect. Before we discuss about the MicroStrategy architect, even I'm going to brush you up about few data warehousing concepts that would be useful from reporting perspective. We will try to walk through the logical data model, the physical data model, and this would be really helpful when you design the MicroStrategy architect. Thereafter, we will start discussing about all the schema objects, as I said, like attributes, facts, tables, and everything. The next topic that we will cover will be the MicroStrategy developer. A MicroStrategy developer is something that you're going to cover all the topics from the development perspective. So we will see how to create all the metrics, filters, prompts. We will discuss about the manipulation methods, the style manipulation methods, the data manipulation methods, subscriptions, and so on. The next that we will cover is the advanced topics. We will have a few advanced content with respect to the MicroStrategy, and that will definitely be covered during our training. We will even see how to fine-tune your reports through VLDB properties. So if in case your report is running forever, or using any kind of a performance issue, we will see how to work around with the VLDB properties to fine-tune our reports. We will even discuss about the cubes and everything. And finally, at the end, we will discuss about the MicroStrategy documents and dashboards. We will see how to create the documents. We will see how to create the dashboards and everything. So this is at very high level that about the training content that we're going to cover up during our entire course. We will see about the developer. We will see the server configuration and administration, few things. We will see about the MicroStrategy architect, developer, MicroStrategy web. We will even cover the advanced topics of MicroStrategy, and finally we will end up creating the documents and dashboards. Clear till here? Any questions so far?
Yeah, I have a question. When you say, my name is Palman. When you say MicroStrategy architect and then developer, you are not talking about a tool, are you? You are just talking about the role called architect and the role called developer.
Exactly. Right? There is nothing tool as such about the architect and developer. I'm discussing about the role. So if you're working as a MicroStrategy architect, what are the things that you're going to handle? And if in case you're working as a MicroStrategy developer, what are the things that you have to handle? So it's about the role. That's right. Not about the any component as such. We have MicroStrategy developer as one component under which you will do all the architect designing and the development designing.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Okay. So as we already saw the interface about the MicroStrategy developer. MicroStrategy developer, and as I said that under that you have project source and project. Every project will have a few set of objects within it. Okay. So you will see few objects under the schema. You'll see few folders about this under the schema objects. You will see few folders under the application or the public objects. This entire structure, this entire folder structure remains same throughout any of the project that you have created under your MicroStrategy environment. So the advantage here is that you really do not have to worry If in case you work under one project, you can even easily work under the second project because the interface remains the same, the look and feel remains the same. So whenever you create any new project in MicroStrategy, it will make sure that it has install all the required default folders. So even if in case you could tomorrow, if in case you create a new project over here, you will see all these folder structures over there. Though those all would be empty, but still my folder structure remains the same throughout all the projects that we have in MicroStrategy environment. This is something that we understood about from the MicroStrategy developer or MicroStrategy desktop. I will even walk you through with the MicroStrategy web. If you look over here, this is the URL that we will use to log in into the MicroStrategy web. Once we try to use that particular MicroStrategy web URL, even over here you have to authenticate yourself. As we authenticate in MicroStrategy developer, even over here we have to authenticate ourselves. So even if you try to log in from MicroStrategy web, some or the other authentication has to be applied. Okay, I will just wait over here. Okay, so if you look over here, it's asking for my credentials. Okay, once my credentials have been authenticated successfully, I can see it required all the folders. If you look over here, you really can't create many objects that you see under the MicroStrategy developer tool. So if you look over here, I can just create few objects like reports, dashboards, forms or something. I really do not have option to create any kind of a scheme objects. I can't create attributes, facts, tables, hierarchies, nothing. So whatever the scheme objects that we have, we cannot create from MicroStrategy web. So if in case you have to create it, you have to do under the MicroStrategy developer, or I can say MicroStrategy desktop. So through web, it's all pre it's mainly from the user perspective. So you cannot give an option for an user to create the required schema objects or something from MicroStrategy web. So the MicroStrategy web is just an UI. You log in into the environment, browse to your required folders where you have saved your dashboards or reports, and once you browse to that, you can just let me show one sample. So we'll go under the dashboard and scorecards folder, and if I try to access any one of the dashboard, my required data set would be executed, and finally it would be displayed in the format that we have set under this particular dashboard. So the process remains it. As soon as I click on the report, it will first go to the metadata, read all the object definition, formulate the SQL. Once the SQL is ready, it will open a connection to the warehouse, fire that particular SQL, fetch the required data, and finally it would be displayed in the output. So if you look over here, this is just a very sample dashboard that we have in the MicroStrategy environment. This I will just walk you through very quickly just to show a few of the functionalities. This is the dashboard which shows me the information about top 10 world airports. Within this top 10 world airports, I have something called as passenger volume trends, which will show me about the information about the passenger volume, and second it would be the historical trend, which will show me the all historical data. So if you look over here, I have a few information about the top 10 world airports. Okay, this shows me a normal chart. It's not exactly a grid chart, it's not exactly a graph chart, it's a combination. So my information can be represented in a tabular format like Atlanta, whatever the top 10 airports. Along with that, it's even displaying me the trend graph from January to October 2007, how exactly the trend of the passenger volume count is. Then it shows me the number of passengers, the number of trailing 12-month passengers, and every information, even including the change in year-on-year and percentage of international passengers. So if you look over here, this is not a standard, I would say, a grid or a graph report, but it's a combination of. Whenever you click any of the airports, let's say Atlanta, if you look over here, my below image gets updated and even my monthly trend gets updated. You select any airport, even if I select Los Angeles, you will see my image and the data is getting updated, which means that whenever you work on MicroStrategy dashboards, you can even link within the document. So if I click on any one of the data or something, my corresponding information about the objects will also get updated. So that depends. If in case you want to create a link, even that is possible. If I click on the historical trend, altogether a new set of data would be displayed with the altogether different display pattern. So if you look over here, it's not displaying the data in a grid or a graph format, but sorry, not in the grid format, but something it's called as the bubble grid over here. So the grid, the graph for the whatever the output type that it's been displayed over here, it is called as bubble grid. Whatever the selection I make over here, again it's based on the top 10 airports. And now whatever the selection I make, if you look over here, my right section dash the chart is getting updated. So if you look over here, if I select only 2 to 3 airports, corresponding to that information would be displayed over here. So basically now my information has been displayed in a bubble grid. Bubble indicates the revenue. So more the size of the bubble, more is my revenue value, whereas the color indicates my year-on-year percentage growth. Okay, once again, I think this does not show me the revenue value, my bad. It shows the passenger count. So more is the bubble size, more is the passenger count, whereas the red color and green color indicates the percentage year-on-year change. If the percentage year-on-year change is positive, it will show me more towards the green side. If it's negative, it will show towards the red side. I even have a flexibility to change the pattern of my graph. So now let's say I don't want to go with the bubble grid, and if I want to see a line chart, I'll click over here, and now my data would be displayed as a line chart. Again, the concept remains the same. Whatever the selection I do, corresponding to that, my lines would be added and I can analyze the data. So this is just a sample dashboard to showcase what all things that we can done in the MicroStrategy dashboard. Though very limited things I have shown you, but yes, we will cover much more in detail as we go through the training. Now, let me try to even create one sample, I would say, something called as visual insight. It's also one type of a dashboard that can be created, and I just wanted to showcase, like by just doing drag and drop, how my dashboard would be ready within a minute or two. So let me just do some practical presentation over here. So I will go to one of the required folder. Let me see that I have that object or not. Give me a minute. Yes, I think I can use this. Okay. We will try to create one dashboard on the fly. I will select some data set that I have to use it. Don't worry, we will see much more in detail. I'm just selecting one of the report that I want to use in my dashboard. Okay. So now if you look over here, this is something called as MicroStrategy Visual Insight. It's different than what we see in MicroStrategy document or a dashboards. Okay, so in MicroStrategy we have two things. One is Visual Insight, and second is MicroStrategy dashboards. Okay, so we have MicroStrategy documents and dashboard. This is the previous top 10 world airports that we saw. That was MicroStrategy document and dashboard. This is Visual Insight. It's very simple and straightforward, but just by selecting few output formats, by selecting some data sets, my dashboard would be ready within a minute. So I'll just showcase over here. I'm going to select the format, Let's say I want to display the data in a grid format. I'll click on grid, and now I just have to drag and drop to get the required data. So if you look over here, we are trying to see the data for country, categories, and corresponding metric information. Okay, so even if I, let's say, add a year, I'm just doing drag and drop, and my corresponding graph details would be updated. If in case I want to add few more visualizations, so I'll click on add visualization. I will try to select the format. Let's say I want to display the data in a heat map format. I will click on heat map. I will try to do some, let's say, region. No, not the region. I will say category, and I will display the data for subcategory. Size, I'm going to display by revenue. Color, I can display by profit. Okay, this is fine. So now if you look over here, just doing a drag and drop, I can display my data in a heat map format. This is the heat map format where you have the individual boxes, like the outside box displays the category data. The inside boxes displays the subcategory data. Green color indicates the more of a profit value. Okay, whereas the the rectangular block sizes indicates the revenue value. More the size of the block, more is the revenue. Green color indicates more profit, less red color indicates less profit. So if you look over here, it hardly take a few minutes or something to create such a dashboards. I can keep on adding the visual insights. Okay, so if I can just click OK, now this time I want to display below the grid, so I can even change the position. So my right hand side is going to continue to display the heat map, whereas the above section is grid, and this I can display in any format, let's say graph format, bar format. So if you look over here, my data has been displayed in the bar format. If I go to the presentation view, so basically I can create my dashboards very quickly, and I can even use it for the presentation. So if you look over here, it hardly took a minute to create a one page of my dashboard. I'm showing the data in a tabular format, bar format, even in the heat map format. So this was just to showcase a sample dashboard. We will see much more in detail as we cover up the MicroStrategy during the MicroStrategy training course. Okay, is this clear, guys? Any question with respect to any of the topics that we have covered today?
Yeah,
I have a doubt.
So, okay, you said right now whatever you showed is based created on using MicroStrategy Visual Insights, is it?
This is MicroStrategy Visual Insight. The one which you're seeing in the screen right now is the MicroStrategy Visual Insight. Yes, and the previous that we saw.
Yeah, I mean before Visual Insight, I could create dashboard using MicroStrategy also, right? I mean before Visual, I think Visual Insight came recently, last 1 year or so.
Yes. So the one which we saw, right, the top 10 world airport, that was the MicroStrategy document and dashboards. This is MicroStrategy Visual Insight. We're going to cover everything in the training. We will see how to create the documents and dashboards. We will see all the functionalities over there, and we will even cover up the MicroStrategy Visual Insight. This is something that I just wanted to showcase you, but in our training it will be covered everything.
Okay. So, so if I have to use MicroStrategy Visual Insight, it has to be done through web only, right? There is no desktop tool, is it?
No. MicroStrategy Visual Insights cannot be created from the desktop. It has to be created from MicroStrategy web. Whereas document or a dashboard can definitely be created from MicroStrategy developer or desktop, but it has to be executed from MicroStrategy web. Does that answer your query?
Yes, it answers. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, Archana, please go ahead with your query.
Is it possible to create multiple tabs in the same
yes.
Visual Insight?
Yes, yes. If in case I want to create a multiple tabs, I will click over here. So it will add a layout structure. So if I click on layout 1, this is one tab. If I click on layout 2, this will have a different tab. I'm just selecting a random over here. Okay. Just to show you, nothing else. That's it.
One more
This.
thing.
Yes, please.
Do we need to have separate access privilege to Visual Insight, or is it just it comes free with MicroStrategy Web?
No, it does not comes free. It does not comes free for everything. You require a license. Okay. So that we will discuss in the training. Even if in case you want to access the MicroStrategy architect, MicroStrategy developer, MicroStrategy administrator, even something from the advanced topics. So every we require few of the licenses for that.
Okay.
And once we have the required license, you can you can access those things.
Okay.
All right. Any question, anything that you want to discuss about the training or something? Because from the demo perspective, this is all that we have. Thereafter, when we start with the actual training, we're gonna start it from scratch, and we will see all the topics that we have discussed. Like, okay, I've already walked you through the training contents, and we will cover each and everything that has been listed over here.
This is Praveen. In admin section, are you going to cover different authentications that MicroStrategy supports, like AML, session, and other stuff?
I will show you that. I'm not listed over here, but I will show you that when we cover the project source, over there we define the various authentication methods. I will show you where you can set it up. That should be okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay. So this is all that we have from the MicroStrategy demo perspective. So we can start with the when we start with the actual training, we will cover everything in detail. So what are the contents I have walked you through, that we're gonna cover it up everything in detail during our training course. All right. So I just wanted to thank you. Thanks a lot for joining in, and we'll definitely meet up during our training.